really necessary.
Might be speech for
It might be, yeah.
closed captioning.
Yeah.
It always winds up with some interesting, like if you go back and watch YouTube videos, like yeah, they do some interesting reconstruction of what actually gets said.
Yeah.
Well, people also have such different accents and stuff. So
Yeah.
I like the points where it just like stops for like a minute and it's like, yeah, there's nothing here. And then so it's like, and then it'll go back to like trying and it's like, nah, just give it up here.
it'd be funny if it does like unintelligible. Like,
Yeah.
you know?
It's just in brackets.
Yeah. You're set as co-host here, so you should be able to share it pretty easily
Okay,
here as well
okay.
when you need to.
Yeah, nice.
They have a clicker and stuff, but I don't know how it works if you wanted like a clicker.
No, I don't think so.
I pulled it out to see, but it's a USB and I only have one USB port, so I could do it anyways.
Is it about to die?
What kind of laptop do you have? It's pretty. Yeah, they were like a startup that created a laptop that's easily repairable. Like you can take like all the parts that are interchangeable, and they sell the parts on their website. So we could fix it in our cool little lab. I'm like,
Computer for a
yeah.
CS major.
Yeah. Have they maintained the like? Can you still get the parts and stuff? Like,
Yeah, I had to buy a new screen not too long ago. I cracked it, so and it's really easy. You can take the whole laptop apart with just a single screwdriver. It's nothing glued in or anything. Yeah.
It's surprisingly got it so thin anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm about to send you our proposals for today. Jacob, you mind sending the ones that you have?
Yeah.
you guys have paper copies or no?
We do. Okay. But before we get to that, so as I told you, we're going to be talking about Article 10 and 7 today. So we just wanted to give you a short little presentation before we discuss that. Just because there's some survey results we wanted to share with you. I think it's important up there. Yeah, I think it's important for us to explain our position clearly. So yeah. We'll present about stipends and workload together, and then we'll go over the actual articles themselves after this. So when it comes to stipends, as I said the last time we negotiated Article 10, GAU's first proposal for stipends will always be a living wage because that is what all graduate assistants deserve. And we want you to know that we judge any compromise that we make and any final agreement that we come to based on how close we come to achieving that goal. We also see Article 10 and 7 as being inherently linked. So last year, and our membership and our bargaining unit also agrees with us on this. And I'll show you some of the comments that we received from them about this. So last year, US stated that we don't deserve a living wage due to our 0.5 FTE status. And that, if people really are working more than 20 hours, that they should take that up with grievance and it'll be sorted out that way. In practice, we know that prosecuting a workload grievance is very difficult because of the overlap with academic work, a subject that we've talked about extensively here at the bargaining table. But the union's position is that the university cannot continue to rely on our unpaid labor and also use our nominal part-time status to not pay us a living wage. And just stepping back for a second, our position on our jobs is that, we are salaried workers training for professional vocations. And we know that the requirements of our work are different from jobs that you just clock in and out of. But we also compare our jobs to what we might get at another professional job at an entry-level position. So if the university comes to anywhere close to agreeing to a living wage, we'll drop the workload issue entirely. Because we know that as GAs, our jobs and our academic life are intertwined, and that such work often requires significantly more than 20 hours. And for this reason, for most GAs, the 0.5 FTE designation is in name only, because in reality, the work requires much more. And if the university truly is serious about changing that, about making sure that no one works more than their FTE, real serious changes to Article 7 will be necessary. And you'll see in our proposal, we proposed some big changes in addition to the ones that you saw last time. So I just wanted to give you an overview of the current state of GA stipends. Currently, 45% of GAs are unable to cover their monthly expenses with their GA salary alone. And most GAs use money from. Go ahead.
Are you willing to email this to me?
Oh yeah, okay. It's in the email that I sent.
Okay, great.
And will you talk louder? Because the AC is blasting.
Oh yeah, sure. So currently 45% of GAs are unable to cover their monthly expenses with their GA salary. Most GAs use money from their friends or family, credit cards, or their savings to supplement their income. And the number of people who, the percentage of people who receive money from friends or family is 65%, 54% use credit cards, and 59% use their savings to supplement their income. About 1/5 of GAs work a second job during the school year, and roughly the same proportion work a second job during the summer. And 81% say that they're unable to save for an emergency, and 28% say they experience food insecurity. Of the people who were willing to share how much money they receive from friends and family, on average, people are receiving slightly less than $9,000 a year. And of the people who were willing to share how much they've taken out in student or private loans, on average, they've taken out slightly less than $14,000. And the reason for this is not really a mystery. The buying power of GA stipends has decreased significantly in the last 7 years from 2017, despite the increases last year. So if you look at the graph here on the right, the blue bars represent the actual 12-month minimum stipend. The red bars represent minimum wage on 40 hours. And the yellow bars represent the buying power of the current stipend adjusted for inflation in previous years. So as you can see, in the years 2017 to 2019, the buying power of our current stipend is actually less than what the stipend was in those years. And if the minimum stipend had kept up with inflation since 2017, the current minimum would be at around $27,000 for a 12-month forward.
Can I ask a question about the chart?
Mm-hmm.
On the red chart there, that's based on minimum wage at how many hours per week? 40.
Working full time.
Okay, thank you.
And as you can see, they're all pretty close to each other this year. So the increased cost of living in the past 3 years has been enormous, especially in rent. If you look at the top chart here, the red line represents the cost of living, and the blue line represents the 12-month minimum stipend in nominal terms. And as you can see, in 2017, the university actually played pretty close to the cost of living as the minimum stipend for 12-month GAs. But in the past few years, especially the past 3 years, that gap has widened into a yawning chasm. As you can see, last year when we made our proposals, the MIT living wage calculator was around $33,000 for one person with no dependents. And this year it's around $42,000. And so despite the increases to the minimum, the minimum stipend has not kept up anywhere close to the cost of living. And one of the biggest sources of this increase in cost is the increase in rent. About 82% of GAs pay more than 1/3 of their income on rent, and 59% of GAs pay more than 40% of their income on rent. And even when sharing a house, GAs are rent burdened, especially on the minimum stipend. So if you look at the graph here at the bottom, the blue bars represent the 12-month minimum stipend in nominal terms again. Red bars represent annual rent for a one-bedroom, and the yellow bars represent annual rent when sharing with one roommate. And even when you're sharing with one roommate, people are paying more than 1/3 of their income on the minimum stipend. And that's been the case for the past 3 years. Now coming to workload, GAs report working an average of 31.5 hours a week. And they also say that they're working on average 9 weeks per semester in excess of their FTE appointment, with 32% saying that they work over their FTE appointment every single week. GAs with international status work slightly less, but also above their FTE appointment, 30 hours a week. They also work 8.5 weeks per semester over 20 hours, which, as you know, is a complete violation of their visa. The visa guidelines are pretty clear. 20 hours is the limit. It's not an average over the semester. It's a hard limit every week. And just so that we take into account this question of academic work, GAs take roughly 3 research credits a semester on average and spend about 15 hours a week on academic coursework. And just to give you an idea of how our membership and our bargaining unit generally thinks about both of these issues as being linked, I just wanted to read you some of the quotes that we got from our survey. So one person says, Gainesville used to be a much more affordable place for grad students to live in compared to college towns in states like California, but now it's starting to put a strain on all of us, especially because as working professionals, we have preferred to not have to live with 4 other roommates just to not have a negative balance in our bank accounts. Another person comments that the nature of the work is just difficult and requires very long hours. To put things in perspective, a research technician too, working 40 hours a week makes on average $52,000. These positions typically only require a bachelor's degree, while I, as a PhD student, work at minimum 10 hours more per week and make $20,000 less. Another person says, if we are only paid for 20 hours a week on 0.5 FTE, we should only be required to be in lab 20 hours a week or get overtime or flexible time off. Yet another person comments, if we are paid 20 hours, we should only work 20 hours. Research credits and teaching credits are part of our job, not an excuse to make us work 40 hours without full-time pay or benefits. Time spent in classes is on-the-job training and should be billable. We are expected to use classes to elevate our research and teaching, and therefore it is part of our employment. If the justification for poor pay and benefits is part-time employment, hold them to a maximum of 20 hours a week. And by them, they mean you.
Can I ask you about that last one?
Mm-hmm.
Is that the effect? Can you go back, please?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Does that last bullet encapsulate GAU's official position?
It encapsulates the views of this person. We've taken the views of lots of members.
So is it purely illustrative, or?
Yes, it's illustrative of the feeling of GAs.
So do you or do you not agree with the sentiment in that 4th bullet? Are you just giving it as a description of what they say, or are you saying that's your position?
No, I'm saying that this is what that person said. I'll explain to you what our position is in just a second. Is there a part of it that you're taking particular issue with?
No, if it's not your position, I'll interpret that way.
Is it the benefits part, or what part?
It seems like they're saying that they believe that the combination of academic and work should be no more than 20 hours a week.
I didn't quite interpret it that way, but Okay, we can move on since
Okay.
that's not.
Like I said, it's not your official position. We don't have to get into it.
But I'm just reading out these quotes just to give you an idea that people see both of these
I got
issues as being. So another person says course hours and research credit as part of the 20-hour billable. If they want to claim we are part-time, that is the reason they want to pay terribly. Let the people actually work part-time. Another long comment by this person in the engineering department. My department pays GA some of the highest at the university, but cost of living in Gainesville is growing insanely fast. I'm fine now, but I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop financially, and I'm one of the better off ones. Part-time work is a nice idea, but at least in the Wertheim College of Engineering, you will never have enough time to do a RA, meet your graduation requirements, and work a part-time gig. It's not feasible. 0.5 FTE is a joke. I haven't spent 20 hours a week on research since undergrad. I'm sure many engineering students would tell you the same. I'm very concerned with keeping up with the cost of living as Gainesville continues to get more expensive. I can only imagine how much worse it is for worse compensated departments. And US only reply is get a part-time job. How can I do that when you want us to be little research running paper publishing machines for your rankings? Not even considering that I have to do courses to succeed and to graduate. I haven't even reached candidacy yet, and my courses are operatively like doing night school with my current work schedule. And this final quote, one person says, I think graduate assistants should be able to either request more hours or have the stipend increased. I have to rely on family members to pay rent because only being allowed to work 10 hours a week makes it impossible to fully support myself. If I'm able to work more hours, it should be allowed. So when it comes to our proposal, as I said right at the beginning, our first proposal is a living wage as the minimum stipend, which as you can see from the screenshot from the living wage calculator for the Gainesville metro area, that is in this year, $41,675. The effective date for that would be January 1, which is in keeping with how the previous CBA was structured. When it comes to the merit raise pool, we calculated that as 5.6% of the current GA salary pool, 5.6% being the average annual inflation rate in the past 3 years. The effective date for that is October 1st, also keeping in line with how it was implemented in the previous CBA. As you know, we prefer lump sums to percentage raises, which in this case would work out to $2,300 for a 12-month and $1,725 for a 9-month, which is assuming 2,755 continuing employees. And we've also written it so that the raise would occur every year of the agreement on October 1st. We, of course, also removed the outside employment clause because we're moving that to the appropriate article. So I do want to preempt one question that kept coming up at the last time we negotiated Article 10, which is the question of, is it realistic? So I hope I've made it pretty clear that this proposal is what is realistic for us, given the increase in cost of living, given inflation, rent prices. We are telling you what is realistic for us. The other question is it realistic for the university? So the increase in cost of this proposal is roughly slightly above 1% of US total budget. And we know that other staff in the university receive, who are part-time workers between 0.4 to 0.6 FTE, receive an average salary of $42,000 in the year 2023, namely the administration staff. We also know that what you're likely to say is, oh, well, look at how big your increase was last year. But what we would say to that is look at how many years we went without any increases. And it's absolutely normal in over a 2-year period for the university administration staff, for example, to receive salary increases of greater than 10%. The total increase in costs for the university of this proposal would be $54 million. And the total increase in GA pay, which would be the total cost minus fringes, is $48 million. And just to give you an idea, in comparison to the value of unpaid GA labor, this is significantly less. The total value that we've calculated is roughly $75 million, assuming 0.48 FTE, which is roughly the average across our unit, and and assuming that people are working roughly 12 hours a week, more than their FTE appointment. So all of this just is to put into perspective that, you know, in the grand scheme of things, for a sector of the university that has been neglected, the actual cost is actually reasonable, and actually $20 to $30 million less than the value of unpaid labor. And we also want to make it clear that, you know, we know the value of what our labor is to the university, and the university should also understand that, and that we know that when you make a proposal, we compare it to that value. So coming to the Article 7 proposal, and you know, we will go through the actual articles themselves in a second. We welcome UF's openness to defining a distinction from academic work, but we do think that there is a long way to go to sort out a definition that is suitable for everyone. For us, the biggest issue is that we need to have a way to prosecute a workload grievance, even in situations where GA duties overlap with academic work. So in addition to the proposals that you saw last time, we've added in a new clause, which is that employees or GAU may request a clarification of how the determination of FTE for an appointment was made. And that can be used to file a grievance, to see how, you know, comparing how the employee is actually working with that determination. And if it is found that a GA is indeed working in excess of their FTE, they will receive at least additional pay for the extra time that they've worked, and either a reduction in their FTE or assistance with the additional work that needs to be done, or an increase in the FTE that is necessary to do the additional work, or some other mutually agreeable solution. And we've also added in another clause in which departments must review and report workload expectations every year, so that they can actually, when an employee requests it, clarify how they came to the determination of the FTE of an appointment. And we've also put in something there where departments may choose to define clearer distinctions between academic work and GA duties, clearer than what we've defined in the contract, because, as you know, university is it's very decentralized, and departments are much more likely to know what are the specific cases going on in their department. And in this, we've also provided references for all our sources, so you can check that out. I sent that to you, Patrick. So we can take a look at the actual proposal. Oops. So in terms of the actual edits, there's not many. One is the effective date, of course, and then, as we said, a living wage on 12-month stipend would be $41,675 for Gainesville metro area, which works out to $31,256 for a 9-month stipend. And when it comes to the raises, essentially, in each year of the agreement, which is 2024 to 2026, the university shall provide salary increases effective October 1. And again, we calculated the merit raise pool as being 5.6% of the GA salary pool before fringes, basically. And so that works out to $2,300 in the case of 12-month employees, and $1,725 in the case of 9-month employees. And then, we deleted the outside employment clause because we're moving that to the appropriate article. So, do you have any questions about that?
So you're actually proposing, okay, I see it. No, I don't have any questions. You guys have any questions? And you sent me the presentation.
So what I sent you is basically the presentation 7, 10, and 21. And I believe Jacob sent you 4 and 5. That's correct. Okay. And for workload, so unfortunately the version that I had is we didn't actually have your edits, so I'll just point out to you which ones are your edits. So this is a line.
Do you guys have papers of these ones?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Sorry about that. Here you go. So this was a line that UF put in, which is that such average shall be calculated using all workdays of an employee's appointment. We deleted this in favor of CCL of the current contract language. As you know, GAs with international status cannot work more than 20 hours a week. That's not an average kind of thing. And you know, for everyone, this is a major change from the current contract language. So that's not really something we're open to. When it comes,
how would you suggest calculating it then?
So the current practice is we do about 3 weeks to show that this is like a recurrent problem. So yeah, so in terms of even just the current informal practice, this is a major change. Like calculating that average over all the work days would mean what, 9 months, 12 months for 9 month and 12-month appointments, or over the semester for semester long appointments.
So
I mean, so basically, I mean, what would happen is you calculate it over the semester, then you have a new appointment, then you know you've already exceeded the time when you could file the actual workload grievance. If you have to calculate it over your entire appointment, by the time you actually file the grievance, you won't be under that appointment.
I guess my question was how else would you determine what your average is if you're only going to pick a truncated portion of your work calendar?
Well, because it's supposed to be 20 hours, it's supposed to be limit every week. It's not, so basically the 3 weeks is to show that it's a recurrent problem, not like a one-off thing.
And the 3 weeks is from, what are you just saying that's just that's the way you calculate it?
I mean, typically that's what we've done in the past.
Like yeah. Past grievances.
Yeah.
I guess older ones. I don't remember ever seeing a 3 week average being contemplated or anything else. But okay.
Okay. For this 7.2, the first 2 sentences are something that you proposed. We're fine with that. The last sentence that you proposed, which is the time spent by an employee on their academic work is not part of their agreement. I think you know we've had a lot of back and forth discussions about the complexities of this of the workload issue. And this sentence doesn't come anywhere close to capturing that complexity. So instead of that, we've added this line saying that the university and GAU agree that in practice there may be considerable overlap between duties assigned as graduate assistant and work required for academic credit. And in such cases, excessive workload is defined as the same way that Jacob defined it last time, which is the hours of your FTE appointment plus 3 hours per research or teaching credit that you're taking, depending on whether you are a research or teaching assistant. 7.3 is a new clause that we put in there. It's the clarification of FTE, as I described before. So upon request by either us or by the employee, a department shall provide a description of its expectations for FTE and ensure the FTE complies with Article 7.1. So again, if either the employee or GAU believes that the FTE calculation does not comply with 7.1, then we can request a review of the workload from the supervisor. GAU may request such a review on the employee's behalf, and the employment supervisor shall review the employee's workload in consultation with HR and the graduate school to determine whether the expectations are appropriate. And the supervisor should provide that report within 30 days of the request. That process should not prohibit the employee from accessing the grievance process. And if it's determined that the employee's assigned FTE is not in compliance with Article 7.1, the university will pay additional hours already worked on a pro rata basis. And reduce the GA's assignment so as not to exceed an average of 20 hours per week or pro rata equivalent, or provide for assistance for the completion of ongoing additional work, or with the consent of the GA, increase their workload in the appointment letter, and include the additional hours of work in their increased pay. And lastly, the university and the GA may work out a different agreed upon solution. And then 7.4 here would be basically the review of workload expectations. So departments would review assigned workloads of their graduate assistants at least once per year, assess whether factors under their control, such as course size, number of courses, graduate student workload, should be revised in order to provide reasonable work expectations for graduate assistants. The departments would also disseminate their workload expectations to all employee GAs and include any summer semester including in any summer semester in which they're employing GAs. And also, secondly, for the review of overlap with academic works, departments may choose to define clearer distinctions between academic work and graduate assistant duties in cases where there's significant overlap. Such distinctions would serve to categorize which aspects of the work fall under GA duties and count towards their FTE appointment versus the aspects of their work that fall under academic responsibility and count towards the hours defined in Article 7.2A and 7.2B, that being 3 hours per teaching or research credit that they're registered for. And as you can see, we deleted your proposal for an alternative way to settle workload disputes. We're not really interested in establishing a process that's outside of the usual grievance process. But as you see, we did incorporate an aspect of this into 7.3, which is to say that prior to the grievance process, the employee may request how FTE was determined.
Well, unless it's you forcing us to do something, because it's not really true that you're not suggesting nothing outside the grievance process, because the entirety of 7.3 and 7.4 are something that's outside the grievance process that you're inserting. So it's not
for settling workload disputes. I mean,
you're allowed to start an inquiry, force us to do a report, give you an investigative action. I mean, and then you say this doesn't toll the grievance process. So it's not really true that you're not interested in processes that are outside the grievance process, because that's what all of 7.3 and 7.4 are.
No, not for settling the dispute. The 7.3A is for understanding how the supervisor came to the determination that this job is in fact only 20 hours of work a week. That doesn't have to do with that. That is not yet at the point of actually filing a grievance or settling the dispute in some other way.
Okay. Tom, do you have any questions on this?
No, but I will say I can hear Sandra well. I can't hear everything you're saying. So
Oh, okay.
Missed your last question.
I was pointing out that I think that processes outside the grievance process do appear to be part of the proposal, is what I was saying.
Okay.
All right.
Oh, that's just for sharing. Okay, so now we'll present 4 and 5.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Just so I understand. For 7.4A, reporting workload expectations,
Mhm.
departments shall disseminate their workload expectations. to
Right.
all. What does that look like?
They can, I mean, we don't specify exactly how that would be done, but that can be at your discretion. I mean, it could be in the letter of appointment, it could be verbally.
What are the workload expectations?
Which is how did they determine that this job is 20 hours a week?
How they determine the job is 20 hours a week?
Yeah. Or whatever the FTE.
So it wouldn't be 20 hours, like if we said.
Whatever the FTE.
So if they said we, consistent with the contractor 0.5, 20 hours to Olivia's point, that wouldn't be it. You're looking for the process by which 20 hours was derived.
That's right.
Okay. So not the expectations, but the way the expectations were calculated.
And are you thinking the entirety of the workload, that person is expected to do?
Or what do you mean?
So like, on a week, this person who is both a graduate student and a graduate assistant.
Right.
Has a load of work that they have to do, and the combination of that is meeting the obligations of both roles.
Right.
Are you thinking that it would be that full workload?
Yeah, so that's what the 7.3B was supposed to be is, I mean, again, I leave it at this point as being optional for the departments to define what that distinction would be. I feel like us at the bargaining table, we can't know of all of the intricacies in every situation. So it's better to leave that to the departments, but they're also free not to. But in that case, then that full limit of FTE plus 3 hours per academic credit, teaching or research, whichever is applicable, then that would be applied to the full workload. Whereas in this case, this would offer the department the opportunity to define a distinction, which would allow for separation of those two.
Would you want an example? Like I can give you an example if you want.
Please go ahead.
So my VGS at the beginning.
By the way, this is Cassie. She's a co-chair at comms. She's yeah.
So she's in the bargaining team?
She's in the bargaining team today. Yeah.
For today, you said, or just?
I mean, she doesn't always attend. She's not always free, but today she was free. So
Yeah, generally now I'm free after the beginning of the semester. So anyway, regardless, I'm being before, but in my department, beginning of the semester, my DGS tells us for like first years that 5 hours of hour 20 should be going to workshops, whether it be hosting them, going to them, or supporting other students in their workshop duties. So having it in the contract is valuable for other departments to know that they should do that, in my opinion. So. It's just
okay, so the next one we got is Article 4. And Jacob, do you have the printouts for that?
I do.
I was sharing my screen for for Article 4.
Okay.
Sent it to me. But if you want to do it, you can go ahead. Might make sense if you do it since you're going to.
So, yes, I was saying that I think it would make sense to pass out both Article 4 and 5 at the same time, since Article 4 references Article 5. I ran out of color printer ink, so I have 3 color copies.
Or are they're both together? Okay.
Can I keep one color?
Here, I'll need a follow.
Or in color?
Just keep it shared properly.
You're looking at it.
Yeah.
If I can have it.
They're together, so this is fine.
I have
Okay.
one.
All right, I think we got one. You can go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, Jacob, can you try resharing? It's not doing the screen sharing properly here. Otherwise, you can have Candy do it.
Yeah, I can do it
Before.
I'll try again. It's so
No.
yeah, I guess somebody else will have to do it.
You want okay.
Okay, let's start with Article 4. This article is getting super cluttered and a little bit messy, but
I can't really follow.
No.
Like, on the side. Like, I don't know who did what at this point.
yes. So the major addition to 4.1 is the returning of that purple sentence. The letter of offer is an important document for recruiting and retaining top performers. our top performing graduate students and standard practice for graduate programs across the country. And then moving onward, the major change is bullet point 3.
Can we go back to that sentence?
Yes.
So what practical binding contractual effect does including that sentence have?
It's,
It doesn't.
it doesn't have a binding effect, no, but it explains the contract better and why, like, for example, bullet point 3 and some of the other things are there, and we want our contract to be understandable by our graduate assistants. So it's helpful to explain some details.
It's also similar to Article 11, where the first sentence says that, you know, the university recognizes that providing tuition waivers is, you know, beneficial for everyone involved. It's a similar thing. That's also not a contractually binding statement. Yeah.
Okay. So bullet point 3, and I carried the
For 4.1.
4.13. This is the one that involved the most change, due to the change that will be coming later at 4.6. So the final sentence there, the letter of offer shall not be interpreted as guaranteeing specific assignment details beyond the initial period of appointment as detailed in this article. That was originally towards the front, and it has basically been modified slightly to make it more consistent with what we will talk about when we get to 4.6. I didn't want to I was letting 4.1 just be about letter of offer, and when it comes to 4.6, we can discuss the part that was previously overlapped. I did not change anything until we get to 4.3, and I re-entered a sentence that is, again, not very binding at all, but says, when practicable, the university shall offer year-long appointments. However, nothing in this article obligates the university to do so when not practical. 4.4,
Can we stay there for a second?
Of course.
So I would argue that that sentence is self-contradictory.
When practical,
with the addition of the phrase when not practicable, because now you've inserted a legal standard that we would have to pass every time we offer a 9-month appointment. By adding the phrase when not practicable to the end would mean that for every 9-month appointment, we would be forced under threat of grievance to have to articulate why that specific 9-month appointment was not practicable, however you interpret that word, to be offered as a 12-month appointment. So I just want to make sure that was your intention.
yeah, it does seem cumbersome to have to deal with grievances for every single 9-month appointment. Last week I remember asking if practicable had a specific legal definition. You said it didn't, so I thought it was.
It has a subjective definition, but it is a recognized test because you've inserted it that would have to be met.
I was going for more of an aspirational phrase, which it fits more in line with what we'll read in 4.4 in both cases.
We don't have to stay forever. I just want to point it out. That's all. We don't have to stay there forever.
So in a counter, you can feel free to rephrase. The goal with 4.3 and 4.4 is aspirational and kind of like setting a normative expectation, but it's not binding. Okay. With FTE, this is a return of older language, and it's simply saying the standard FTE is 0.5, which is something that the university has declared previously. And it explains for the reader why it's important for 0.5 FTE to be the standard. Okay, now Moving, 4.5, I did not change anything since your proposal. This was how it was, yeah. So 4.6 obviously is the big one, and this is consistent with language you've seen like a draft of before. I'm gonna read it out. Because full-time employment as a graduate student is an eligibility criterion for graduate assistantships, because graduate programs require longer than 12 months to complete, and because the act of hiring an employee implies that the employer believes the employee is capable of performing the duties of their graduate assistant appointment. The university and UFFGAU recognize that there is a normative expectation that reappointment will occur. The frequent inclusion of planned multi-year support within letter of offer both reflects and reinforces this expectation. As such, non-renewal of any graduate assistant appointment may be enacted only by reason of any of the following. A, continued failure to perform duties as specified in the letter of appointment, after the provision of 1, a written performance evaluation indicating deficient performance, and 2, a corresponding performance improvement plan as outlined in Articles 5.1 and 5.2. We could switch over to 5.1 and 5.2 now if you would like.
No, let's keep going.
Okay.
We'll do it in a minute.
Such written notifications must have been provided at least 60 days prior to the renewal date of the appointment in order to provide the employee with a reasonable opportunity to implement stated expectations. 2, the University of Florida and UFFGAU acknowledge that the graduate assistant's right to 1, formal notification of deficient performance evaluation, and 2, a corresponding formal plan for improving performance does not imply that GAs have the additional right to grieve non-renewal based on their subjective assessment that they have sufficiently improved sufficient performance. Judging whether an employee has successfully met employment expectations remains the sole discretion of the employee's supervisor for that employment term.
So, Jacob, would I be right in interpreting in a general sense that the intention of the language is that the offering of a PIP is purely procedural? In other words, because we retain, the way I think you've written it, we retain the right to determine whether or not it's been successful. You want to bind us to offering the plan, right, but we retain complete discretion to interpret whether or not the employee succeeded.
That's correct. That is what number 2 is supposed to make abundantly clear.
That's what I'm just making sure that I'm understanding what your intention is. Thank you.
And that's why I listed out very specifically right 1, right 2, and then not this possible third right that somebody might assume that comes with. Okay. B, C, and D are direct quotes from Article 4.8 when it's talking about termination mid or like curtail, diminish, or termination in the middle of a contract. So we obviously want to allow you those avenues to not reappoint as well. And I even added E because we want to like not do a silly thing where graduate assistants can't not get reappointed even though they graduated or something. So voluntary resignation has to be one reason why you're not reappointed, because you like get graduated and stuff. But we are open to however many avenues you feel the need to put under this 4.6. And previously talking about this, you had mentioned that you have this concerned about limiting the reappointment, what is under current contract language an absolute right, limiting that to like different possible avenues to exercise that right. The importance of listing them out is so that when performance problems are the issue, it travels down the Avenue A. It has to, we have to make sure that when performance problems are the issue, we're following a procedure for performance problems. But if there are other avenues that need to be there, we are open to that. Perhaps we didn't foresee some other reason that's very important to the university to not renew on that basis. 4.7 is a carryover of, it is what 4.6 used to be, and the main way I changed it is saying reappointment notice, and 4.6 is about reappointment eligibility. Okay, I did not change 8. This is back and forth, obviously, but it is coming from your last proposal.
So you don't think there's any changes in all of 4.8?
I copied this from your last proposal. That was what I started the document with.
All right.
I don't see any of that like lighter purple that was used in my other. Oh, never mind. It did. I don't know. The formatting on this document is crazy.
It's really,
Yeah, I
four
think in
is
the future,
really
can
bad.
we just like remove all the strike-throughs, like from like, you know, 5 sessions ago, like that?
Yeah.
I would be down
Yeah.
to like clarify
This is
that.
impossible.
Maybe we should all hang on to this Article 4. And then if you, when the next time when you counter propose 4,
Yeah.
you can like clean it up however you need, and we can have this as our reference to like
Make
that
sure,
previous language.
Yeah, we've just done so much surgery to this one. It's
Exactly.
so hard to figure out what, like who said what when.
Yeah.
Like there's very little current contract language even left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had both,
There's
your
when I was
proposal,
getting back in.
I had both your proposal and our counter proposal open, and I was like comparing them back and forth. That's pretty much the only way to do it.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, so I do not think I've touched 4.8 at all, but with 4.9 and 4.10, I did make changes. Oh, I think 4.9, all I did is fix what number it is referring to. 4.10 though, I did return it to the language that was in our previous proposal. You had implemented some changes. You can see there in the deleted comments on the side, including if a teaching assignment is, or I'm sorry, for 9-month employees receiving summer term appointments, employees may or may not be awarded a tuition waiver for the associated summer term at the discretion of the hiring unit. I talked to you about this a few sessions back, but we are worried about creating a backdoor where if we broaden this out, it's no longer just about TAs. It could be about RAs. And then we create a thing where you can have 9 months where you're getting tuition waiver. And then you could obtain this summer appointment, but you don't have to do the tuition waiver anymore.
Yep.
That could, and who knows if it would, but it could create a situation where people tend to give 9-month appointments and then give a supplementary appointment instead of just giving 12-month appointments.
Yeah, I thought I understood when you had said that. I think that what the university is with that specific provision, because we haven't talked that one in a while, is we just believe based on our conversations with several different specific units that there are additional opportunities that we would really like to be able to offer. And I understand I'm not disputing what you're saying. It absolutely is possible. But I will just say, I think that there's a significant number of opportunities that are not being offered simply because of that. So while I understand you're looking at it from the perspective of, well, what if we don't offer 12-month appointments anymore in the most extreme case and say no 12, all 9s, that way we get out from under the tuition. We're trying to look at ways of not having to assign a GA or an RA as like a student assistant OPS in the summer because they're doing work that is probably more closely approaching what they would be doing during the year, but that unit doesn't necessarily have the funds to offer the tuition waiver.
Yeah.
And one of the other things, and Tom, I need your help to make sure I get this right the way I'm saying it is, sometimes they don't have to take any classes during the summer.
I think that's it.
So if they don't have to enroll if we have to give them a tuition waiver, they actually have to enroll in classes they don't need, for credits they don't need, so that, just so that we can give them a tuition waiver, which they don't need for classes. Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah.
it's creating this whole additional.
Yeah, there might be a way to word
Well, I
it,
was just
word
about
it that
to
would
say,
say.
the last
Yeah.
time you did the wording, I
Yeah.
still don't feel comfortable with, but you are aware now of what the
Yeah.
concern is with the
Right.
backdoor path, if
Yeah.
there's.
I'll see if we can
we
figure
will
out
hear in future proposals.
a way to make it to make
Just
it
a
happen.
comment on that, usually like for example, for me, my department doesn't actually offer any classes over the summer. So every summer, I'm still paying tuition because I'm taking research credits, which I still pay tuition on. So that's usually what a lot of DAs will do. They're not, if they're gonna take summer, but this are gonna be working and not taking any classes, will just do research credits. But you still pay tuition on that and still need to be waived and the fee.
Right. Yeah.
What's the current, like, what do we do currently? Like, is it that everyone has to
you
be?
have to enroll so that we can give you a tuition waiver. I mean, to be consistent with the contract, that's what we have to do.
Okay.
It just, again, when the conversations we had, and some of them were pretty at length with several different people from around campus, was these weren't credits, they didn't really need them.
Yeah,
You know,
I don't think I've taken a summer class.
Yeah, so to say that we have worked for you over the summer, but it's conditioned upon you registering for courses that you don't need so that we can waive them so that you can work. We're like, well,
Right.
what if you want to work and we want to pay you to work?
Right.
But we don't want to force you because you're working to also take
those
courses.
credits.
I think that
I
makes
think-
total sense.
I think, a good way to make us not concerned about the, backdoor is you could write it such that, like, if there is no class requirement, they don't have to, they would obviously not need a tuition waiver, but that makes it so there's not a backdoor where you could not be paying tuition when people want you to pay tuition. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
If you
I see what you're
If
saying.
you could scalpel out that piece, then there is no backdoor.
We'll take a crack at it.
I think we should do 5 real quick, because they're rather small changes, and then talk about both in combination. Awesome. So 5.1, the green writing is mine.
It's like Christmas.
Yeah. And it is brought up from, the sentence that you added in the pink. So like you mentioned you say, let's look at your pink sentence. Should no such evaluation be conducted for a particular appointment term, the employee shall be treated as though they successfully met employment expectations of the supervisor for that appointment term. So I think when we're defining the job performance shall be evaluated in writing once during each such appointment, we should say by the employee's supervisor for that employment term, just to clarify who is the one that is evaluating that. And that also maps on then to what was added over in 4. Remember when I said that the sole discretion remains under the purview of the supervisor. So consistency across the board there. That's the only addition on 5.1. 5.2, I added that first sentence. That was to help clarify something Olivia had mentioned last time we talked about it, that theoretically departments could, like, I mean, you didn't say falsify, but almost like get a negative evaluation, or kind of like do these performance improvement plans just so that they're on record, so that they could have then not reappoint based on like, oh, we got the performance improvement plan sitting right here.
It was more so that I didn't want all your members getting the performance improvement plans in their files. If they did something minor, that wasn't like overall unsatisfactory.
Okay, so that's, a second reason why it helps to clarify this. So now we're just making it explicitly clear that the written evaluation, the written evaluation should include an explicit statement as to whether they met the expectations or they have demonstrated deficiency. So first we have, and that language is carried from 5.1, your language as well, just making it very clear. And then evaluation shall be discussed with the employee. I struck the rest of that because it was already addressed below. Like 5.8 is about this performance improvement plan. So noting and suggesting improvements, we can just take care of that down below.
So can I ask about that sentence?
Yeah.
Not the last one, but the one you mentioned before.
Yeah.
So are you interpreting that sentence? The evaluation should include an explicit statement as to whether the employee met employment expectations or demonstrated deficiencies. Are you sure that handles all cases? Because I think it's possible for someone to overall meet my expectations, but also demonstrate deficiencies that I want to tell them about.
I interpret deficiencies as separate from like they're meeting expectations, but they could be doing better. Like those are more about like optimal or exceptional, acceptable, etc.
So you're viewing
Like
it as
deficient-
unsatisfactory or satisfactory. You're
Yeah.
viewing it in stark terms.
Deficient implies deficit,
Okay.
you know, remedial. It's more.
So like not an area of an improvement, like,
Right.
hey, you did an okay job, but in the future, I'd like you to focus more on so on, so, you know,
Exactly.
blah, 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 blah.
Those people would be meeting employment expectations, but with some like rooms for growth. But obviously those people then would not be getting performance improvement plans because they met the expectation.
Overall expectation.
And right, if they get a statement about how they could like do better in the future, that wouldn't be a performance improvement.
Right, okay.
So picturing a template at the very top has a satisfactory, unsatisfactory, and everything else is narrative underneath it.
Basically, yeah, there just needs to be that formal indication because then we're being very clear that performance improvement plan only comes when they have demonstrated deficiencies. Obviously you can suggest optimizations and stuff regardless, but that's not a performance. Okay, A, this is now bringing that struck through sentence on 5.2 and kind of integrating it into what already existed with A. So when evaluations are discussed with employees, the employees who were evaluated as demonstrating deficiencies in their performance must be offered a corresponding performance improvement plan. I struck in lieu of renewal. I wish that we can address that over in Article 4. Right now, we're just talking about the procedure for these employment performance evaluations. So they must be offered a corresponding performance improvement plan, providing the employee with a suggested course for improving deficient performance. A reasonable schedule shall be given to accomplish the necessary improvements. And then that pink language at the end is all old language. As far as the reasonable schedule, it is unspecified here, but recall under 4.6, we did say that if performance issues are a reason for not reappointing, in that case, 4.6A1, such written notifications must have been provided at least 60 days prior to the renewal date of the appointment. Because we are essentially surrendering any right to be like, hey, we met this performance improvement plan. We are like completely leaving that to the supervisor. So I really don't think many people, you need a couple months to really convince a person this person has really changed in a fundamental way. I am gonna reappoint them after all. So that is the rationale behind needing at least 60 days. If we leave the judgment entirely in the eyes of the supervisor, there needs to be a healthy period of time for that employee to prove to the supervisor.
All right, so I'm trying to chart out the timelines. So if the renewal notice date is May 15th, and I have to give you 60 days, but I also have to give you 60 days to work on it. If I subtract 120 days from May 15th, am I noticing you in like 15 days after the semester starts that I have problems? Like,
I'm sorry, I didn't understand. So what's the first 60 days and the second 60 days?
I thought you were contemplating 2 periods of 60 days.
No.
Okay.
A single period of 60 days, and it's only relevant when the question is reappointment eligibility. So that's why it's over in Article 4.
Okay.
If there's a question of reappointment eligibility, a negative evaluation, and the performance improvement plan should have happened at least 60 days before the renewal date
All right, can we talk, through a practical example, see if it conforms to, because there's a lot here, I want to make sure I'm like checking all the different points.
Yeah.
So under your proposal, if I meet with an employee at least 60 days, let's say 61 days prior to May 15th. So it would be March 12th, let's say.
Okay.
And I assign them a performance improvement plan. And I say, okay, these are the things you're going to work on. You have 60 days to improve. The 60 days commence, they go through. I don't see the improvement. 60 days later, now it's May 12th. At least 60 days ago, I say, look, I haven't seen the improvement. I'm going to non-renew you. That's before May 15th, and I allowed a 60-day period. Does that conform to what you've laid out?
That certainly conforms to all of that. I'm looking at the notice thing real quick and making sure it doesn't contradict that. 4.7. So the current contract language in the case of 12-month appointment does have 90 days notification of whether you're renewing or not. So,
but that's part of the expiration of the existing appointment. It's different because like the two sentences are different, because on 9 months, it's like a hard and fast May 15th for the following year. Because a 12-month appointment typically expires like July 31st. Right? That's the way I read it.
oh, right.
Because it's 90 days before the expiration.
Yeah, okay, so then it doesn't seem like it would conflict with that either, and 45 and May 15th are both, that's not lengthening past 60
It would
days.
probably have to be 15 days sooner, because basically May, June, and July, for typically 12-month appointments that start August 1, assuming it starts August 1.
Yeah,
You have all of July, all of June, all of May. Yeah. And then so it would have to probably be like April 28th or something like that.
it sounds like 60 days wouldn't contradict that 90 days past the,
So now I'm at April 28th, let's say. I back up, now I'm at March, now I'm at February. So February 28th, because I would need 60 days.
no, you said August 1st is or the day before August 1st.
Yeah, so
July
July 31.
is the expiration of the existing appointment, right?
Right.
So
back up 90 days.
July 1st would be 30 more days, and then
June,
May.
So now we're May 1.
Yeah.
But I got to get 60 days previous.
No, because the notification that you're not renewing could happen May 1st.
Right. So what is the last day that I would have to implement and show the PIP?
60 days. So, okay. Right, it would be March and April would be the 60 days.
That's why February, so it's by February 28th, I would have to present, assuming it wasn't met, like extreme situation, I have to show you the PIP by February 28th in order to have a chance to non-renew a 12-month employee by May 30th, which would get me by April 30th, I would be clear of the requirements for a 12-month renewal, which would be in the ensuing August.
So you would be about this far, even further into this year than we are right now. You would have an entire fall semester and more than 2 months of the second half of your appointment.
Yeah, I'm just trying to again, put all the dates, like what the practical limits are.
60-day periods, right? One is for
The
the PIP
90
and one is for non-renewal.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the
It's
evaluation
the
would have to be
evaluation that has
executed.
to have occurred before the PIP comes out.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not saying, so that works as long as we don't put in a deadline for evaluations to be conducted.
Yeah,
Because if we say we give somebody a deadline, we're gonna wait till last day.
exactly.
Right.
So if we said deadline, evaluations have to be done by May 1st, then they're all gonna wait till May 1st, you know. so
And then
it's not-
nobody would be able to be non-renewed
then
even if they were deficient,
yeah.
because they wouldn't be able to get a PIP in time and they wouldn't be able to get their notice period.
Yeah, and this like doubling up of day periods, I recognize that's a little confusing. I wanted to keep the current contract language just to show that that's not something I'm trying to change, but if you, in your counter proposal, want to like clarify it, I do strongly believe we need the 60 days to prove to a supervisor that we really have changed, if that's a thing. And then, the notice is very important because they gotta, like, get out of their housing possibly, and they need to find a new job and stuff. So I do think both time periods are important, but if you'd like to kind of like rephrase how that timeline works, I'm open.
Honestly, it's complicated enough. There's enough. I just want to make sure I understand what you're actually proposing first.
Yeah.
That's my primary thing, is just figure out, okay, is this what, do we have a common understanding of what it is you want to see?
Sure.
You know, whether or not, what parts of it we can agree to or not is, I'll leave that for after I can make sure I understand.
Jacob, would you say that, is there one that is more important than the other? Like, if you say, like, you know, you want to condense the entire period into 100 days or whatever, like, which one would we rather which period would?
I imagine the period to help improve performance would be, but,
Would be shortened?
no, would be more important.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah, because maybe
I agree with that.
it's almost as though if you're put on a performance improvement plan, it's kind of like a warning that I might not be here.
That's right, exactly.
So,
And
it almost functions in a similar way.
And I think you know, I'm not understanding kind of like all the different deadlines. Maybe there could be language saying like, if that PIP happens like within the 90-day notice period, there could be language saying like whichever date comes first. So as soon as the PIP period ends, you would then receive notification if it cuts in those 90 days before. Maybe something like that.
I can see that, though. Where I get concerned is there is like, in terms of like navigating the world, like with leases and getting to your new housing situation and finding that new job, you simply can't just do that on a turnaround. So I do think there needs to be at least some time allotted to, you've been notified you're not getting reappointed. It's too late to change it, but you have this much time to like change your life to reflect that.
And most leases that are in the summer, in that case, they need 60 days notice.
Yeah.
But so that's 60 days before non-renewal.
Because there's no severance package, there's no nothing, we just jump right into the next thing if that happens. So we definitely need time. They're both extremely important. If I had to choose one more important, I guess the time to improve, but they're both extremely important.
I agree, yeah.
Any other questions on this one?
Yeah, any questions about 4 or 5 in combination? There's a lot of cross synergies.
I'm sure I'll have some, I just need more time.
Yeah.
A lot.
Okay.
Then we have 21. Do you have it for now?
I didn't. Okay, I'll leave it.
Oh, I didn't. It was supposed to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, my bad. That was my bad.
Yeah, I mean, they're really. I think we're pretty much in agreement on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's we very little.
Yeah.
Can you just film up there?
Yeah.
The only edit I had was just the notification for the administrative leave to separate it from the discipline, the notice of the disciplinary action, since there was some stuff in the disciplinary action that didn't apply to the administration leave notice. So that's the only thing I added. Everything else is what we talked about last time, so scroll down. So this is all still the same. Same, the disciplinary, the progressive discipline line same. So really just there in pink there, for A and B. It's just, I just put the written notice shall include the allegations be investigated, state that the start and end dates of the administrative leave, and then just the same thing, like be delivered mail or through the university's official email. But everything else is kept the same from last time we talked about it. Well, you did mention that you said that the notification is typically not verbose, but you did say that it at least include like what's being investigated.
Yeah.
So that's why I just include the allegations being investigated, start and end dates of the leave, and then be delivered.
Yeah, I think so. Typically, it's like you're kind of like put on admin leave. It will say pending investigation, and then if there's an investigation being conducted, you'll receive a separate notice of investigation.
Oh, okay.
So that is like what would include the allegations.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
All right. Well, then if
no,
that's not typical, then that's fine.
No. Yeah. I just want to make sure, because if we come back and change it to be conform with what our HR.
Yeah.
Typically is, I just want you to understand.
So
where
there
that's
is,
coming
but
from.
there will be notification of the allegation, like.
Oh,
what's
yeah,
actually
yeah,
happening.
if there's an
Okay.
investigation, there's
All right.
Yeah,
information.
because
about
the
that.
charge letter doesn't necessarily contemplate administrative leave. The charge
Right.
letter is normally a separate document.
Not everybody under investigation is put on admin leave.
Right,
You know, like
right.
it depends on the circumstances.
Sure.
There's some sense of urgency that we need to put on.
Right.
I may not have all the.
Right, okay, yeah,
Pretty
yeah,
well, we just are not.
yeah, I was just kind of going by what Patrick said last time.
Yeah.
I didn't want to include too much since, you know.
No, we got
Yeah,
it.
We
Okay.
got it.
I
just
think we
wanted to
understand.
get a
Alright, then-
sense of-
Yeah, I just want to just at least like start and end dates and then just the delivery, you know, just the same as disciplinary action. So I think we're pretty much agreed on everything else we're here now.
All right.
Everything else is.
Yeah. And for 21.8, I left that stricken out. I think we're gonna, for on US side, we'll come at it from the other way of the other articles talking about accessibility to bathrooms and things like that. I feel like it's a better way to tackle this issue since we couldn't really agree on this and because of the bog regulation as well. So
All right, so it looks like we're pretty close on that one.
yeah, I think we're pretty much good.
All right. You mind if we do like a 5-minute caucus? Just like 5 minutes? All right. Let's have a quick chat.
Water out.
What's that?
Yeah, it is a little.
That's why people are having trouble hearing as well, because it's AC.
Yeah.
It's like a wind tunnel.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any point in doing debrief right now. We might as well just wait till we.
Yeah.
Who's in there?
Also, I go to the bathroom.
Pause the recording as well.
Oh, yeah, I think
Oh, yeah.
they're.
After we all stated that we have to use the bathroom, I'll pause it. For recording.
That's fine.
Then you guys might have been talking and some people might have heard you.
No, yeah, we
Okay.
we were talking. I was just asking Danny questions. Okay.
Do you have a proposal for us today? or-
Yeah, I'm emailing to you right now. All right. It's Cameron, Jacob, Austin, Brandon.
Like all three of us are just watching ourselves on the camera. For
Yeah.
a second. Just looking at the owl.
All right, so we're actually gonna start off with you guys ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
They should be, they're in the ether.
Sure.
So should be there in just a second. So the first one is about a topic that we had actually proposed last year. That's a new article. I've got it labeled as Article 2X, because I don't know which one it would be at this point. And it's actually about professional development and joint training. This was a topic that we had talked about. It was a while ago. I'll just read it. It's pretty brief. Joint training. No sooner than the second year of this agreement, the parties agree to participate in professional development concerning the process of collective bargaining, effective contract administration, conflict resolution, and or similarly germane topics to the labor management relationship. Such sessions shall be attended by both chief negotiators and majority both bargaining teams. The session shall be facilitated by the Federal Mediation and Conciliation Services or other group or individual as mutually agreed upon by the parties. The time, location, and length of the training shall be mutually agreed upon by the parties. I don't know if you guys are familiar with FMCS. They do have an office in Miami. They typically provide such training at no cost to public, especially public groups that are engaged in collective bargaining. It is a resource that I have used and been able to use in labor management relationships for many years, quite frankly, and I do find it to be helpful and useful. Had an opportunity to talk to the team about it. We think there may be some benefit, but we're also happy to answer questions or talk about it, or, you know, we understand you may have an opinion that's different, so.
Yeah. I was just wondering, so, what would this entail exactly?
So it could entail a whole range of things. I mean, one of the best ways to probably describe what sorts of trainings they offer is to just go right on their website. They're a government agency. It's not like a for-profit institution or anything like that. And they do everything from probably some of the more like noteworthy or newsworthy things they've done in the past was like for when Amtrak had like a huge shutdown, like they came in and served as the facilitators, but they also offer support and training when you're not in complete, like you also don't have a terrible relationship and you're not like just completely, it's all defunct either. They're able to, again, just provide a whole host and range of support services with respect to both employers and also labor groups. And the topics can be what they'll design a program based on what parties want to see. So I can just ask you to consider it.
So it would be like kind of like a pulling it out.
Yeah.
Is it like, so it would be like collective bargaining mediation? That wouldn't be.
No, I mean, they will do mediation, but they also offer a whole range of professional development services, everything
Labor
from
management partnership, repair broken relationships.
Yeah, sometimes they get called in like if things are going really poorly,
Right.
but they also come in. So we used to offer trainings twice a year on a combination of interest-based bargaining and conflict resolution. And it would be both groups would come in and
So kind of like how to bargain.
Before you even start.
yeah, exactly. Not like you don't bring your contracts and be like, hey, help us resolve this. It's more like, okay, look, how do we sort of do this effectively? How do we make this work? What are the rules of the road that we can mutually respect? Stuff like that.
If GAU didn't have a majority of our bargaining team there, would that mean that you would like put a grievance against us? Because we're like violating.
So we don't typically file grievances.
Yeah, that's why I'm wondering. What happens when that type of situation would arise?
I mean, I think this would be something where we would hope you would follow through if you agreed to it. I don't think we have a whole lot of. I think you'd be able to hold it over our heads if we refuse to participate. I'm not so sure how we would be able to compel you to do it. I mean, I think we could probably file an unfair labor practice. That would not be a good use of our time and resources if we were to do that. I mean, technically, yes, we would have relief, but I can't imagine that would be, and the irony would be palpable if we literally filed an unfair labor practice on your refusal to engage in proactive labor management relationships. I mean.
Any questions?
I mean, I'm concerned because obviously on our side, we have grad students coming and going, so we're not going to be here the next 10, 20 years. So doing this one time might be beneficial, but then, you know, all of us could leave the week after and we have a fresh bargaining team, so we don't benefit from that. So I'm trying to think about the long-term
so I'm actually
situation with this.
I'm glad you brought that up because again, one of the reasons we want to actually put this in here is so that it would become part of the contract. And then we would continue to do it once every 3 years. In other words, we would do it hopefully in the second year of a contract. So that first of all, we would have an opportunity to not only meet because you're not that it's going to completely turn over, but once every 3 years, I mean, even just in the time I've been here, you guys have had significant turnover. So it would at least once every full book cycle would offer us an opportunity to sort of go through it again.
Yeah, I think in that case, I think it might be better to guarantee than like maybe the last year of the thing because you're more likely to have people who will be there for the next full book cycle. I think honestly we're gonna have to talk with everyone else and see what their thoughts are, but
okay, cool.
Yeah, I think the idea was to try to do it before a full book cycle.
Yeah, so you have the team that's gonna be there negotiating and you can have this talk, and this doesn't affect anything else regarding the bargaining, it's just giving you skills at the very end of the day. So maybe
kind of like at the beginning, we had like we all got together and said, what are the ground rules? And how are we gonna try to do this and like exchange it? Like, you know, like this could be part of that discussion.
Right.
If you're gonna do that, since the chief bargainer for us is going, like, if that is like certainly going to change for the next full book cycle, if they could send like a delegate, like something would be more useful.
Yeah, I mean,
like leaving and like.
Yeah, if you want to like, you know, you want to send additional people. I mean, we used to, the trainings that they set up for us, we normally had between 3 and 4 dozen people would go every time. And then we just asked people if they were actively bargaining, that they would at least go like once every 5 or 6 years.
Oh, this is like somewhere, like you would go somewhere to do this.
Well, no, so it would be in a central location for, like, we did it and we did it in our central office in our HR building, like,
Okay,
people would
is
come.
this like a 1 day thing or
Whatever we decide. I mean, they'll do half-day programs. I've gone to a program they did that was 3 days long. That may be a little excessive. I mean, there's all kinds of different things that.
Do they have food?
No, it's on your own. It's free. It's supported by the federal government. Like, they don't charge you anything.
Okay. All right, thank you.
All right. So the next one we have for you is actually one that you guys gave us a while ago, which was actually Article 28, which was a new article. So we kept it 28, even though it's not currently a.
Right, I just put that in there so that we have
Right. All right, so this is about regulations and policies. And it's been a while, so kind of before it's all new language.
Right.
So let me kind of go through the parts of it that we have here. We took out established terms and conditions of employment for bargaining unit members shall not be changed without collective bargaining pursuant to chapter 447 Florida statutes. We feel that's redundant. It's already, it's already something we have to follow. So B would become A. I didn't actually change it yet, but that was what it would be. If the university adopts a new regulation or amends an existing regulation that has a direct and substantial impact on wages, hours, or other term and condition of employment of employees in the bargaining unit, which I believe was an added thing that we put in there, the university shall satisfy any collective bargaining obligation with respect to the change prior to implementing it unless UFF-GAU declines in writing to bargain over the change. If the university is required by law or Florida Board of Governors regulation to adopt a new regulation or amend an existing regulation that has a substantive, direct and substantial impact on wages, hours, or any other term or condition of employment, the university and UFF-GAU will bargain the impact of the change in accordance with Article 24. Implementation may proceed prior to completion of impact bargaining in such cases. So what we're trying to do here is set up to two, they're acknowledging the fact that if we were to change a regulation that impacts, we have to come to the table. The key thing that represents the biggest concern for us is, and this is something in somewhat recent history we have experience with, sometimes we're compelled to comply with something before we have an opportunity to finish bargaining it. And we just want to make it clear that if we're coming to the table and attempting to bargain it with you, sometimes we can't wait until we're done with that process before we have to do whatever we're being told to do. Mm-hmm. And we need that to be acknowledged in the agreement.
So, okay, so here there are two Bs, but I guess this is supposed to be A, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Sorry,
So,
it's that same
no, I know,
auto numbering thing.
So in A, so basically A would be to bargain the substance of the regulation versus the bargaining impact of the regulation.
Right. Yeah. So in other words, if there's a legal compulsion, by basically a statute or a BOG regulation says you guys have to do this now. Mm-hmm. We don't want to get into an argument with you guys about whether the contracts clause or the constitutional legal authority of the BOG or the Florida legislature is more important. Mm-hmm. Because that's happening. Like, we don't want to have that argument. We obviously have to address the substantive topic, mm-hmm. but we're not going to be out of compliance with a legal authority that we have to comply with because of the contract.
And so in A, basically, A would be a situation where you're adopting a regulation, but it's not because you're required to do so. Right?
Correct. That would be if we make a discretionary regulatory change.
Okay.
Was 28.2 and 3, was that original contract language crossed out?
No, this was part. So yeah,
that's my proposal.
Yeah, the proposed language here, and because again, right. We think it's counter to. One is counter to 28.3 is counter to what's above. 28.2 we already share electronically on the website. All right. So we crossed out notice of proposed regulations that we're going to provide you an advanced copy of the proposed regulation that could be reasonably to affect terms and conditions of employment. I mean, when those are ready, I don't want to misspeak, Olivia. I mean, they're basically posted because it's part of a public meeting. They have to go to committee.
Yeah, they're publicly posted. I mean, there's also if you subscribe to administrative memos, I think they come to you.
Yeah, right to your inbox. Yeah, there's a listserv for it. And then 28.3 is extremely problematic for us because that is basically the exact opposite of what 28.1, specifically B says, is that no existing, new, or amended university regulation, policy, or resolution shall apply to bargaining matters if it conflicts with express term of this agreement. again, our whole thing is, look, if we have a legally recognized constitutional or legislative authority that's telling us we have to do something, it's unfortunate if it conflicts with something that's in the CBA, but we're not going to be like, do we follow the law or do we follow the CBA? If they tell us we have to do something, we're going to do it. We have a responsibility to meet with you, talk to you about it, and bargain it, but we're not going to not comply with the law. And 28.3 basically says you don't do that unless we agree to it first, and we can't agree to that provision. Go ahead, man.
Who sets the university regulation?
So they're ultimately approved by the BOT, Board of Trustees.
That's our employer, right?
Correct.
So you're saying that it's problematic to say that our employer can't set a policy that conflicts with our CBA, with that employer?
Okay, so keep in mind, the BOG and the BOD are separate. So the BOG is the state level body. The BOT is the one here at the University of Florida.
Okay.
So the BOG, who oversees the entirety of the SUS system, if they pass a regulation that says all the universities shall, or frankly, I guess it wouldn't be possible for them to say just the University of Florida would do something, but I don't think that's typical. We have to follow it.
Right.
So they set a regulation, then the BOT follows that regulation.
Sometimes it'll say all universities shall have a regulation that say X or address this, whatever.
That's put into the US.
But if something in our CBA becomes illegal, then we already have a process for that not applying anymore.
Right.
So it seems like 28.3 would only cover scenarios where there is not a legal obligation to violate the contract. And ultimately, it is our employer who would be saying, we're going to violate the contract. Like, it's only protecting against those type of situations.
It's not limited in that fashion, though. The way you describe it that's not a limiting factor in 28.3. We think that's what 28.1B talks about.
There is some, I don't remember the article, but it specifically says if any part of this contract becomes illegal, it's.
I think that's only,
Yeah.
for 24.
So it is limited because if any part of the contract becomes illegal, it already doesn't apply.
Right, but that's in the severability article. You guys proposed this in addition to that.
About regulation.
Yeah, we initially said, look, we think the severability article can stand on its own. Then we reconsidered it. We said, okay, if you want this too, that's fine. Well, we can agree to some of this language, but we can't agree to all of it.
So do you see how, if the severability thing is already on the table and it's going to stay there, then putting 28.3, it doesn't make severability not the case anymore. So the only time where no existing, new, or amended university regulation, policy, or resolution shall apply if it conflicts with express term of this agreement is a regulation that is approved by our employer that is conflicting with our agreement with that employer.
Right.
But it's not a legal obligation because otherwise it would be covered by severability.
Right. 24, severability applies to the provisions of the contract. 28 considers UF regulations. So it's two different sets of responsibilities.
Although they could overlap.
Well, yeah. If there's a regulation, if we have a CBA provision that mirrors the regulation or references the regulation.
And I do have a clarifying question.
Sure.
So for A, in this case, the first point, you're saying, and since 28.3 is stricken now in this, like how this article is, the university could have not have a legal obligation to make some change in the regulation, but end up making a change that conflicts with the contract. And you're saying that can go into effect and be kind of impact bargaining that kind of, but we would still have to come and find out a resolution to it, even though if you had no legal obligation to make that change to violate our contract.
So B actually doesn't talk about impact, or the A that listed as B, but the first one that we didn't cross out.
That's right.
It says shall satisfy any collective bargaining obligation with respect to the change prior to implementing it, meaning we made a discretionary regulatory change.
Okay.
It's impact.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Okay.
essentially, like, we have a management right to make certain
Right.
types of decisions. And
Okay.
if the university implements a new regulation as part of its management right, and that new regulation has a direct and substantial impact on wages, hours, or terms and conditions of employment, then we have an obligation to bargain the impact of that.
Okay, but I'm just clarifying, like, 'cause I didn't want it to sound like you can just make a regulation that would break the contract in some way, and we would have to impact that, even though there's no legal reason to do
So the
that.
authority is not going to go back upstream, meaning if the university sets a regulation, we may have to take some actions, but we're not going to be, this process is not going to send information up and cause a
But
regulation change.
For in this A though, you have prior to implement it, will set outside of finding collective bargaining obligations. So that's what you were saying, Olivia, that if it's not a legal requirement to make this regulation, but you end up making the regulation, you would do it without violating the contract, and then you'd be with this. But it doesn't violate the in contract, but it impacts the contract.
Yeah, right.
Okay, I just
Yeah.
want to make sure that this.
Yeah.
Okay.
It shouldn't violate it
Okay.
because it's a management right, but it will impact the terms of
Right.
the contract, in which case, unless you all find to bargain it, then.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Want to
Yeah. And then the second, and B is just kind of like a
for the
a
legality.
take on that, which
Yeah.
is like, if we're required to, which sometimes we're required to have a regulation on a certain issue, then we're, yeah.
Okay.
And it's similar to when in the severability one where it talks about if a provision becomes legally invalid, like, and we have to stop doing it, but we have to, then there's other actions that we're obligated to take.
Right.
So A is the situation where you make a discretionary regulation and, we would bargain the impact of that.
Right.
But the regulation itself wouldn't violate the contract.
Correct. Well, the implementation, it's more about the timing of implementation as opposed to the regulation. The regulation is going to be the regulation.
Well, I think the point is, it's like, don't make a regulation saying like, I don't know, something absurd like, all DAs only make $1 a year, like, just something like that. Obviously, that directly violates the contract. So we're not, but you're saying you're making regulations behavioral or something else that doesn't directly affect the contract, but impacts us. It's kind of, I'm just a little, I think I'm a little bit confused.
Well, I think if you have a regulation and you have a CBA and they're like the same exact, they're like kind of both covering the same thing, then like, I guess we have like a non-renewal regulation that applies to employees that are, that wouldn't apply to you because we have a non-renewal provision in your CBA. So we do have, we currently have regulations that apply unless there's a CBA article that applies separately. That kind of makes sense, like.
Right. Maybe that wasn't a good example. I was just trying to think of, like, there shouldn't just be like regulations that are just coming out that we have to impact that would contradict the contract, and we have to keep like impact bargaining them because the university is making changes for whatever reason.
Yeah.
That's what I was kind of seeing going with that, like striking 28.3. So,
And then I think we can move on.
Yeah. We can just move on. We can talk about it whenever we can.
All right.
Okay.
So we've got a counter to 16. So we know we've had kind of a lot of back and forth on 16, specifically with respect to release time. And after, a bunch more consideration, and we've really kind of thought about it back and forth. At this point, we think the best way forward is actually just to eliminate release time altogether. We don't feel at this point that it's really in a mutual interest anymore. We understand that it may be an interest in GAU, but we don't feel it's a shared interest to actually pay for and provide the money for release time. And we don't believe we can support assigning parking passes to GAU. I don't believe that's something that's offered to just about any other employee or employee group, and I don't think we're going to be interested in doing that either. The request for notice of the office locations and the graduate orientations, we'll go ahead and we can agree to those too. But I think at this point we're ready to just kind of end the release time program altogether.
And why is that?
like I said, we don't feel it's a mutual interest anymore. We realize that you have an interest in it. We just don't feel it's a shared interest.
Anymore. So what was the previous shared interest that's no longer?
I don't know. It was definitely something that was way before my time. I don't know when it started.
To my understanding, it was to handle, like clerical things, like grievances, paperwork, emails, things like that, to ensure that grievances were like lean and neat and easily understandable and followed. Rachel was an RT and that was under her provisions as an RT at that time. Right now we have people that are not RTs doing that work. But usually it's to guarantee that we have somebody who is able and available to do those things. No matter what. Because it opens up to the risk of somebody not being available from those duties if we don't have the RT program.
Yeah, I mean, that very well may be, but I don't think that's how it's, at least since I've been here, that's not how it's been used. I think you use it for like office administration, maybe some membership stuff, but not for that.
No, we can't do that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any other GA contract in Florida that doesn't have to do.
Yeah. But with that in mind,
Yeah. All right, those are the three we have for you today. I don't know. What I'll do is I will send you guys I don't know if it was helpful or not, but I'll send you an updated scorecard, kind of like I did last time, and say that this is the ones that we feel like are on. We're currently sitting on. These are the ones that you guys are sitting on, just to kind of update who's got which article on their side.
Yeah, I think you going over the scorecard and stuff. Yeah, I think we do need to do that. We were just discussing. We made a proposal about discrimination like in November or something like that. So that would be we'd like.
Is that 12?
Yeah, I believe it's
12. No, I think it's 13.
It's what
I
is
okay.
Irish for health insurance.
All right, so you'd like to see it's 13. Okay.
I think that's when we've had discussions where I think it'll require significant work on both sides. So I think the sooner we get working on that on both sides, I think the faster we'll get progress.
We'll talk about it if we're ready to give you guys a comment on that one.
Yeah, I was hoping we'd have the new Title IX regulation.
Yeah, we've been kind of waiting for those to come out. They originally promised like November, like October.
We're hoping this summer.
Oh wow.
They're supposed to come out.
Well, the last change was so significant. Like it added all these procedural response. It was a pretty big. The last change was a pretty big change.
Well, I'm gonna ask our Title IX office if they have an update on that.
Okay.
If they have heard anything, but.
All right.
Okay,
Thank you all.
See you next week. Okay, folks, let's switch to the debrief.